Hogan, it has been a few minutes since we last convened the Line Drive podcast, but in the intervening time, what with travel schedules and all that stuff, it just wasn't going to be possible. But in that time, man, oh man, has a lot of stuff happened, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, this week's been a long year, that's for sure.
Yeah, it has.
And Republicans have never had 2 hours consecutively of good news coverage, a good news cycle. We've had 2 weeks of it, which means I think the hammer, the size of the hammer that's probably about to drop is quite mallet sized.
It is. Point. Yeah. And I would say that based on the initial coverage of Kamala Harris here, the most of the mainstream news media it's like Christmas morning for them. They're like, Joe who? If he weren't still president, and we'll talk about the obvious question of whether or not he should still be the president. But if it's as though they're acting as though Joe Biden has just dropped from existence, and their new favorite thing in the world is Kamala Harris. Where was this love for Kamala Harris in 2019 when she was actually running for president the first time? There wasn't any.
Well, they tried to make it happen.
I guess they did, but she didn't.
They tried. She has a say-so in that too.
That's true. She does have a say-so in that. But we'll get to all of that because I swear I cannot recall a 3 or 4 week time period ever in my adult life where there was so much just massive stop the presses news, one after another. I mean, the incumbent president of the United States announced by tweet, by the way, announced that he is withdrawing from the race and not running for re-election. And that's the second biggest story of the past couple of weeks.
Yep.
That's staggering. Anyhow, we'll get to all of that because that's what we do here on the Line Drive podcast. So by second biggest story, of course, by that I mean that the first biggest was the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I mean, anytime a current or former president there's been an attempt on his life, that's clearly the biggest news of recent history. Biden withdrawing from the race can only come in second. So as we stand now, and I guess this conversation can probably meander around because there's so much stuff that feeds into all these different things. As we stand now, and we tape this about mid-afternoon on Tuesday, Kamala Harris is now the apparent nominee of the Democratic Party. It seems that she has all the delegates that she needs. It's just a formality at this point that she will be the nominee. She's going to have to pick a vice presidential candidate, and then it's off to the races. She's got 95 days or 100 days or something. I don't know if we've passed the 100-day mark or not, but she doesn't have very much time to mount a full-on presidential campaign, even though she's inheriting a lot of the apparatus, which I'm sure will be helpful, better than starting from scratch, but it was not built to be her campaign. It was built for someone else. So where are we at? What do you think?
Well, they don't like her very much either. Remember, the Biden people aren't big fans of the Kamala Harris people. So I give it about a week before you start hearing stories about clashes internally and the palace intrigue that follows. There's a question. This is historic and a little bit concerning for a lot of reasons. One is just the technicality of it. It's hard, obviously, to transfer that money over. Democrats will say, no, it's Biden-Harris ticket. Now it's Harris-Biden. It's the same. But for anybody out there who gave $5 or $20 expecting Joe Biden to be the top of that ticket, they have a legitimate claim to go, wait a minute, I didn't give that money to Harris. I don't even like her. I liked him. I just tolerated her because she was on the ticket. So who knows if that's even going to happen. But bigger than that, I think right out of the gate, as you know, Tim, what you want to do in politics is you want to define your opponent before they define themselves. And there's a 4 to 5 week period here where Republicans have an outstanding opportunity, even in the face of the Olympics and everything else, to try and define Kamala Harris as what she is. She is way more radical than Joe Biden and way less likable than Joe Biden. And to start, the PAC put out an ad that was, I thought, smart to basically point out the fact that Kamala Harris is part of the cover-up of Joe Biden's bad health. He was not, in fact, running triathlons behind closed doors, but was as decrepit as we saw him in public. And she was one of the purveyor of those lies. That was a good move by them. They also need to point out her radical giving of her pronouns before speeches. She's done that in the past as well. And also remember, for the first time in history, it was always the Bush administration, the Obama administration, the Trump administration. This group made it a point to say in press releases and other things, it's the Biden-Harris administration. She tried to take credit for things like the Afghanistan withdrawal because she was in the room with Joe. She helped make all those decisions. She was the deciding vote here and there on various issues. And so if that's the case, then she has to own, or we have to make her own, all of those bad policies that people hate. And the more I think we do that, the better off we'll be. Now, I will say two more quick things. I wouldn't even say they're all that quick, so just bear with me.
Yeah, that's right.
I think they're going to run kind of a pseudo Joe Biden basement strategy because the more people watch Kamala Harris speak, the less
she's not
they
good.
like her.
She's not good. Not good.
She's going to be scripted like a mofo. Okay. They're going to put her on a teleprompter and say, do not get off of this. Do not cackle. Do not say something
do
about
not do not cackle.
Huh?
I think they're going to put her on a no cackling regimen.
I think so. I think they're going to say, do not talk about what you've been unburdened by or what you hope to. Don't do any of those things. Don't talk about Venn diagrams or school buses. I think that's going to be one thing. But also, I want to make this point clear. Do not underestimate the media's ability to elevate and destroy. Okay? 3 weeks it took them to, in unison, unseat a sitting president of the United States. They have tried and tried and tried over and over and over again to get Kamala Harris to be popular. It's that line from Mean Girls, that movie. You can't make fetch happen. You were never going to make fetch happen. She wasn't a thing that was going to be popular. They have tried and tried and tried, but they will come out now in a unified voice to say, Joe Biden is so selfless of a man to give up the presidency for the future of this country. He didn't. He was pushed out, whatever. But the same media that said Russia collusion was real, the Hunter Biden laptop and the Ashley Biden diary were fake, and that Joe Biden was really behind the scenes a gymnast. He could walk down the hallways of the White House on his hands doing handstands. They're also going to try and tell us Kamala Harris was the best vice president we have ever seen, more accomplished, more credible than anybody who's come through those doors. So be ready for that PR campaign. It's going to be something between now and November.
Yeah, it's already started. I mean, just the gushing of it. And this new thing now, I've never even heard of it. The brat, where they're trying to, like, it's some recording artist talks about it's like a lifestyle or it's a vibe where it sounds like you're describing somebody who's like completely mistake prone and completely irresponsible and just doesn't care. And that's what it means to be a brat. And apparently Kamala Harris's campaign is embracing this, which I suppose is fine because they're, in advance accepting the idea that she's going to say and do some pretty ridiculously dumb things as it's coming up. And she was you're exactly right. She was part of the cover up. You just wait. So in the last 3 weeks, as you just described, that the media took to tear down Joe Biden and get rid of him, they pretended. And again, pretend is a big word here, and it's doing a lot of work, and it's intending to do. They pretended to be horrified that the White House had concealed how bad Joe Biden had gotten. Now, the media was, of course, in on it. So they were bad. And part of it was, part of the way, I think, part of the reason why they went after Joe Biden with such vigor and were so vicious about it when they finally did turn on him is because when that debate exposed to the entire world exactly what Joe Biden's condition currently is, it exposed the media too, because they had helped hide it. And now they're mad at the White House for implicating them and making it plain to the whole world that the media was in on this cover up. So Kamala Harris was part of the White House apparatus that was helping to cover that up. So while they do absolutely have an interest in elevating her and they want to see her be elected, absolutely, they're on her team. It wasn't very long ago that they were mad at her for having been one of the ones telling the lies. And I don't think that's going to change how they promote her and all that stuff. But you just watch how fast all that stuff is memory hold. Like I said at the beginning, they've already forgotten about Joe Biden. I mean, some people were saying, earlier this week before he finally did return to Washington, maybe it would be a good idea if the White House proved to the world that Joe Biden is still alive, show the guy on camera.
Yeah.
But now that that's been accomplished and Biden is back and he's in Washington again, the media doesn't care about him, man. There's a new game in town. He is yesterday's news. And how does a Democrat, and a million people have talked about this because it's true, how does any Democrat who called for Joe Biden to step aside as the candidate in any way can make the argument that that was enough and he can still serve out the remainder of his term? He was too impaired to run to be president, but not too impaired to actually be the president, which I would submit is a harder job than running for the office. Wouldn't you say?
Can't run the campaign. You can't run the country.
Exactly. If you can't, the guy shouldn't be running a corner store, let alone the United States of America. And no offense to corner store operators, it's a hard job, and I don't think that Joe Biden.
That's why he couldn't do it.
Yeah, there's no way he'd be able to keep track of inventory and know what to order and all that. No chance. And God help him trying to run the cash register. No way. But so the media was having an axe to grind with Kamala Harris because she helped them look bad for in part of the cover up. But I don't know about that. I think they're not going to go after her for that, and I don't think they're going to go after her for anything. They've already started to give her like the cover on. I have a clip from Morning Joe that I wanted to play, but I couldn't get it to upload, so I'm just going to describe it. It's them. There was a congressman who directly called her a DEI hire, said that Kamala Harris was a DEI hire when she became vice president. And Morning Joe was scoffing at that, saying, what is this, 1951? You're saying that the black lady only got hired because she's a black lady? Well, no, here's what's happening here. People are repeating what Joe Biden said before he hired her.
Right.
So no, we are not saying she's a DEI hire. We're saying that Joe Biden said she was. Right. He said in advance, I am going to pick a black female running mate. That's what he said. He said the same thing about the Supreme Court too. I'm going to pick a black female running mate. And right. he sure did. That is the very definition of a DEI hire. And we know that because he said so.
Also, they will say those DEI hires are good. It's a good thing to hire based on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then when you say that person's a DEI hire, they go, that's racist. Yeah. No, you just said that was a good thing. I'm pointing out what you said just happened, and you're mad at me for noticing it? That don't make any sense.
If you question Kamala Harris's qualifications to be vice president in the first place, you are being insulting and you are being racist because you are assuming that she was only hired because she is a black female. When in fact, that's exactly what Joe Biden said he was doing. We're only repeating his hiring criteria back to him. And on this, where's the evidence that Joe Biden is a good and decent man? What is the evidence of that?
I don't know. They say it a lot.
They say it a lot. I think Joe Biden likes to think of himself that way. But I can't simply saying that, when he says stuff like my word as a Biden, I gave you my word as a Biden, as though that is like some kind of gold standard of honesty and integrity that is recognized around the world, that's all you have to say. No one thinks that about Joe Biden. No one except him. My word as a Biden. Man, that means nothing. Don't you know you?
You're right. Look, this race still, I think, is going to be won or lost on issues, policies that Kamala Harris has implemented alongside Joe Biden that have hurt the American people. I think it's going to be won and lost on turnout apparatus at the local level. Republicans have been destroyed by Democrats for decades in that realm. I think we've turned a corner. I think there are groups out there that are doing some good work on making sure voters are notified, making sure they're registered, they're mobilized. There's poll watcher, poll worker trainings. There's ballot chase programs, ballot harvest programs where legal. Those are all vital things. And that's what you have to do to win elections. You and I worked on the 2020 campaign. And we heard a lot of numbers floating around. I don't know how many of them were true. There could have been some validity to it, but it just seems a lot of these folks in years past have just said, here, we knocked on 55 million doors in 2 days. And it's like, that's impossible, but they touted the numbers. Now it's a situation where you've got to make sure those folks voted. And honestly, what keeps me up at night is the fact that Donald Trump got anywhere from 10 to 14 million more votes in a reelect. Never happened before in the history of this country. And he's still not sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania right now.
Right.
That makes me nervous. And look, if you were going to get rid of Joe Biden and put a candidate in place to run against Trump, I would have hand selected Kamala Harris. But you have to understand, as we've been trying to get to here, what the media will do to try and prevent Donald Trump from becoming president of the United States is going to become so evident in the next several months, because so many on our side thought that the press had found Jesus in their coverage of the debate, that, oh my gosh, Joe Biden, that was not what that was. What that was, it was an understanding that they, the media, their agenda, the media, was not going to win, that Joe Biden could not get it over the finish line. So they, the media, collectively worked to get rid of him and have someone else there so they could have a puncher's chance. And I would argue the precedent's now been set. If we get closer and closer to the convention and Kamala Harris falls on her face a few times, or polling shows she's going to lose even worse, why wouldn't they change again?
Right. What is their motivation? That's a heck of a precedent that they've set.
Sure.
And also Democrats are the kings of doing this, is when they change longstanding rules or change longstanding norms, like, the filibuster in the Senate for judicial selections, right?
Right.
Schumer said, we're going to get rid of the filibuster for judicial selections. And McConnell said, don't do that. You will regret it. You won't like the way this turns out, because do you think that you're always going to be in the majority? Then, of course, the answer is no, they're not always going to be in the majority. And then guess who benefits from the change in the filibuster rule when the filibuster is scrapped for Supreme Court justices too? That's how we end up with 3 Donald Trump appointees on the Supreme Court.
Right.
And the Democrats hate that, but they're the ones who changed the rules to make it possible. They're doing exactly the same thing here with this Kamala Harris switch out for Joe Biden thing. 14 and change million Democrats voted in the various state primaries, and they selected Joe Biden as the candidate. I would say they selected Joe Biden as the candidate because the White House and the media had concealed from everybody that Joe Biden was in no shape to run for re-election or even be president. So it's a whole separate argument that the primaries were fraudulent in the first place because their candidate was a fraud. He wasn't who they claimed he was.
Sure.
But regardless, almost 15 million of their voters voted for the guy. He is their nominee. Now he's clearly going to lose. That's why they're swapping him out. They only care about him losing, because otherwise they would want him out of the White House in total, but they don't care about him running the country. They only care about him losing to Donald Trump. So they're swapping him out. If the Republicans find themselves in a similar situation in the next cycle or the next cycle or the next cycle, and they decide, you know what, our candidate is 15 points underwater, we better do something here, and it's even, let's say it's September, why can't they change their candidate? Or why not? Democrats have demonstrated that they can without any repercussions. Not a single member of the mainstream media has issued a peep over the fact that the supposed party that is defending democracy has completely subverted their entire nomination process and decided to let a few party insiders decide who their candidate's going to be. I mean, it's just a finger in the eye of everything that they claim to stand for, to put Kamala Harris on the ballot. And they don't care. The media doesn't care, because they're all on the same team, and winning is the only thing that matters to them. They preen and pretend that they're the ones with all this integrity, it drives me absolutely bonkers.
Remember, too, when Kamala ran for president, she wasn't popular. She ranked like 8th amongst Black Democrat voters, behind the lily white Bernie Sanders from Vermont and a fake Indian, Elizabeth Warren. Okay. Someone who lied about their race. Mm-hmm. She was that bad as a candidate. She fell that flat as a candidate. And after she called Joe Biden a segregationist and a sex criminal, she had those t-shirts ready to go because it was a canned line. She couldn't capitalize on that either. So she is a bad politician. What you and I are both saying, though, is, and I think the people need to understand this, the cover she will get is going to be monumentally more than Joe Biden ever thought about getting.
Picture, if you will, the moment that is coming when she appears on, I don't know, the Jimmy Kimmel show or something.
Yeah.
The cringe inducing, it will take every ounce of willpower that I've got to watch that segment.
She won't do it, Tim. She's not.
I bet you she will. I bet she'll do those ones where she cannot possibly fail on Jimmy Kimmel.
Yes,
that guy is in the tank.
She will not do that. I predict now she will not do it.
I'll bet you lunch that she does. I don't want to specify one of the late night comedies. She does one of the late night interview shows.
No way.
You're saying no? She's not going to do any.
Nope. No way.
I bet she does Jimmy Kimmel.
She's so bad. They will keep her doing scripted things on prompter, off prompter. She is a gaffe-prone, word salad, incompetent machine.
I don't know. They trusted Kimmel to handle. They trusted Kimmel to handle Biden. He emceed that big fundraiser. He didn't do the show, but he did
remember, she's more radical than Joe and less likable than Joe.
Oh, I know. I know. That's
so
true.
This is a woman who uses pronouns to introduce herself. Like,
yes,
it's going to be a problem.
She helped raise money for the people who were burning down buildings and killing people in the BLM riots.
Yeah,
specifically in Minneapolis. She helped raise money to bail them out of jail, so that they didn't have to face the music for burning down Minneapolis.
$4 billion in damage.
Yeah. And she raised money for the people who did it.
Not for the people who lost their businesses and their livelihood. They'd spent generations building up. Nope. Not for those who targeted cops, not the cops' families. She didn't raise money for them. Nope. She raised money for those who committed the crimes.
Yep. That's exactly what she did. So I got a text from a reporter from Semaphore. I think he's with Semaphore now. All these different online outfits, man, they keep changing. These reporters keep moving around. I can't keep track of where they work sometimes. Anyway, a guy texted me and said, "Hey, where do you think Harris is most vulnerable?" And we haven't talked about this yet, I don't think. But I answered, and it's not a unique answer, and I'm no genius for thinking of it. But man, the first thing that came to my mind is the border. Joe Biden put her in charge of the border, made her the border czar. It's a job that she did not want. It's a job that she did not do. She didn't even really attempt to do it. And she doesn't care. And it shows. And the border is an absolute catastrophe. They insisted there was nothing wrong, just like always. They insisted there was nothing wrong and that everything that you see was positively not happening. And now they've acknowledged that, and that it's a disaster, and they're trying to blame it on whoever, anybody but the Biden administration. But it's really Kamala Harris. And I imagine you're going to see the Trump campaign zero in on that, because she was directly tasked with fixing our southern border, and it has gotten dramatically worse. I mean, where does that rank on the list of her vulnerabilities? What do you think?
Well, it's a vulnerability from the standpoint of the American people don't like the policy, but it's a success and something to tout from the Biden administration, because they wanted an open border, and she made sure there was an open border.
Sure, but they can't say that now. They can't. There's no way. Biden campaigned and promised having an open border. That's how he promised all these goodies and promised no deportations, the whole bit, healthcare, work. Well, you can come and join our workforce. Everything's fine. We won't deport you. Borders are open. That's why people showed up at the border wearing Biden for president T-shirts and telling reporters we came because Joe Biden said he wouldn't turn us away. They say that all the time. So they were happy about their border policies until it became a political liability. Well, it's still a political liability. The media forgets, man. They have such a short memory. Because of the Trump assassination attempt, they forgot all about whatever they were talking about. Then the Biden withdraws from the race and says he's not going to run for re-election. They forgot all about the Trump assassination attempt. Now, Kamala Harris has the nomination locked up, is going to replace Joe Biden. They have forgotten all about Joe Biden and the Trump assassination and whatever they were covering before that. They have just totally moved on. But the people have not. the border is still a mess. And even if NBC News doesn't cover it nightly, it's still a mess and people know it. It's still a very potent issue because voters don't have the attention span of a house cat like the news media does.
Yeah, but
you don't think the border is going to be something that they hit her on?
Oh, of course, and they should. Listen.
Yeah.
Okay. The dust is going to settle. They're going to get their stuff together before this convention. They're going to put on a show. They're going to bring out Joe Biden like he is the most, selfless politician ever. They're going to bring up Kamala Harris like she is the generational talent that she isn't. And then we're going to have a conversation about issues for the next 3-4 months. That's what it's going to be. And
yeah, I do hope it's on issues, and the border is going to be one of them.
And the border is one of the biggest because it's a top issue for the American people. So I'm looking forward to that. Kamala is most likely going to double down on abortion. She's going to go on her, abortion-loving.
That's all they're going to do. It's going to be about democracy and abortion. That's their whole thing.
Well, remember, Joe Biden, of course, agreed that we should bring the temperature down, not talk about that, which takes away their entire platform. But at the same time, the threat to democracy issue is interesting to me because as NPR polling shows, the majority of the American people think it's Democrats who pose the biggest threat to democracy. And it shows such a blind spot for the media to think that when they say, as the media, and when Democrats say threat to democracy, that everyone who polls that issue very highly, of course, thinks what threat to democracy means is exactly what they think it means. But it isn't. And I think the Democrats have a problem with that moniker because they feel like the country's right there with them on it. And Republicans think they're threats to democracy too. And newsflash, it's Democrats.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk about this, I'm always reminded, I know I've brought this up a number of times, but there was one focus group that I saw a videotape of the focus group, and they were asking, it was a Democrat focus group with Democrat leaning voters. And they said, let me ask you what your perceptions and your opinions regarding January 6th are. And they were met with a lot of blank stares. Like what?
Yeah.
And she said January 6th. And the people said, what are you talking about? That's just a date on the calendar. What do you mean? I mean, the attack on the Capitol. Oh, that. So Democrats, like, they talk to themselves in their own little shorthand. And they never fully explain what it is that they're talking about because they always do this. And it's one of their biggest, if not the biggest flaw, it's the biggest flaw that most Democrats have, is they assume, it's like being too online. They assume that everyone that they talk to believes the same things, knows the same things, and is triggered by the same phrases. So if a Democrat talking to you would say, oh, well, January 6th, assuming that you know precisely what that means, you mean the attack on the Capitol, and you also mean the same connotations that person believes
that Trump directly instructed.
Right.
It. Yeah.
You believe and they use January 6th. That's the shorthand for all of that stuff.
Right.
And that one of their blind spots is not knowing that not everyone sees the world the way they see it. And they never understand that. And it's the same mistake they make about immigration. For years, they have thought that all they had to do was say Trump and immigration, and that's it. And they win the argument because he is so bad that no one could possibly support him on the issue of immigration, only to discover they're on the short end of the stick on that one. That must have been quite a shock when they realized that they were wrong on immigration.
They have lied about so many things as it relates to Donald Trump and his, saying he was involved in January 6th, which he wasn't. They've lied about the border, Wuhan lab leak theory, all the things they go in on him. I mean, they spied on his campaign, all those things. And so, the American people remember that too. And it's incumbent upon the campaign and the PAC to continue to point that out so that you see the stark difference between the two, not just on policy, but also some ancillary issues that make people riled up as well. So we've come from an assassination attempt into a time period where the convention, did you go?
I did not.
Okay. I went to that, and I don't want to, can we shift to that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Let me tell you something. I've been to a lot of those in my lifetime. I've never seen anything like that in my life. if I fully expected that first night when Trump came out with the little square on his ear to protect where he was shot,
A bandage.
they'd have had those things branded with MAGA or 47.
There were some people in the crowd who fashioned their own,
Their own. That's what I'm saying. Had
Yeah.
you done that, the campaign would have made millions from. He had just like a booth set up with that. It had been,
good move
millions.
not to.
But as far as the convention was concerned, you knew how unified it was because of a lot of the speakers, meaning there were all the speakers that were former candidates. We also went outside the tent. I mean, I looked up and saw Amber Rose speaking, and I remember people around me said, "Who is that?" And I said, "I don't even have time to."
I know all about her, but I don't want to. Anybody.
Yeah, I don't have time. Just go look it up. And then you had the president of the Teamsters Union. You had Hulk Hogan tearing his shirt off. You had
the Hulk Hogan thing.
White.
I think a lot of people are crediting Joe Biden's retirement to the Hulk Hogan shirt ripping. He was like, I can't. Nobody told me there was the shirts and
Well, seeing
that was my Joe Biden impression, by the way.
It wasn't good. No. And seeing all of that, but then also the real people, the moms who'd lost their kids because of fentanyl poisoning.
That was something
brought on by Joe. Gold Star moms losing their loved ones in Afghanistan, talking about that and because of Joe. Moms who couldn't make ends meet, couldn't buy certain things because of Joe. I got to tell you, it was a home run on presentation. It was a home run on substance. And at the time, you have to think, Democrats, I mean, they're still courting black people in July, so they clearly have a problem. They do not have Hispanics wrapped up. They just kicked their top of their ticket off the ticket, and now they're going to their vice president. Again, this will settle, but man, what an impressive week it was in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Let's think about this, though, what the Democrats and the media are trying to sell us now. The way you were just landing that thought made me think of this, is that we know exactly what has happened. The facts of the current events that have just passed before our eyes are so stark. You had a former president of the United States being the subject of an assassination attempt. He narrowly escaped death, narrowly, by the narrowest possible margin you could ever escape death. So that sort of turned him into an instant hero. I mean, it's an amazing thing. He survived an assassination attempt. An amazing news story.
Sure.
That is obviously advantage to the Republicans just because of the repercussions of that. Then you have Joe Biden go and he had this disaster. This is not in the chronological order, but he had this disastrous debate, which exposed him as the doddering, decrepit old man that he is. The national news media turned on him. 3 solid weeks of incessantly just nuclear attack, bad news coverage for Joe Biden. He is then forced out of the job of running for re-election and for president of the United States, forced out by his own party, leaders of his own party and the media, replaced by his vice president, who was such a bad candidate the last time around that she withdrew before it was even 2020. She quit the 2020 race in 2019.
Right.
Before the Iowa caucuses, before any votes were cast, before anything, because she was so unpopular and no one was giving her money and she couldn't keep her campaign going because they were broke. That's how campaigns end, for lack of support. All of those things have happened. And now the Democrats and the news media want everyone to believe that the Democrats are exactly where they want to be. They are riding high. They have never been in better position than they are right now after all those things. Are you kidding me? You're going with the B squad, who no one wanted the first time she took a crack at this thing because the previous guy had lost his mind. And you're trying to convince us that you're happy with these circumstances? Come on. They're lying again. It's the same thing. Harris is a terrible candidate, is the same as, but they're not the same issues, but Biden is senile and doddering. That was a cover up. Now they're covering up for how bad Harris was.
Yeah, but also their main goal is to get rid of Biden, and they did that. So they're going to ride high for a minute, but then that reality is going to settle in, how awful Kamala Harris is, and then they're going to be like, oh no, we did it again, just in a different way, right? It's a different kind of bad.
You know, after a primary, And when all the candidates say bad stuff about all the other candidates in debates and during the course of the primary and interviews and TV ads and whatever, and then somebody wins, and then the media digs up all the negative stuff that all the other candidates said about the winner.
Yeah.
The media could do one of those reels on itself about Harris.
Oh,
because
sure.
back in 2019, when she was running for president, she was not getting good reviews, and people said bad stuff about her performance, her candidacy, the whole shebang, her management style, the way she drives staff out,
Crazy,
like 92% staff turnover. She's terrible to work for. All of those stories were out there.
Sure.
And so,
speaking of, what do you think about JD Vance?
I like JD Vance. I think he's a great pick. I think his personal story, a story of coming up from nothing. And I just wrote a book about my own struggles with addiction, and his life, of course, his early years were very much shaped by addiction and the people around him. Great personal story. It comes from an important state that has important issues. I think that JD Vance, his story and the economic policies that President Trump supports and is going to run on, the refurbishing the manufacturing industry, turning our energy supplies back on, giving the American industrial workers a fair shake, paying attention to them again. All of that is sort of embodied. JD Vance embodies that. That's the part of the country that he's from. And I think that the guy like Donald Trump has already been president once. He's probably the most famous person on the face of the planet. I don't think that he operates under the normal rules of picking running mates. Most times you pick a running mate to give you something that you don't have. When you've already been president, I'm not sure that electorally or politically there's anything that anybody else could ever possibly bring you, because you're so well known already. Like, what else can you add Donald Trump? People know about him already.
Right.
That said, I think JD Vance, we know how big important these states are going to be. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. Ohio is a Republican state, but those other industrial states, what used to be the blue wall, Trump won them before. I believe he can win them again. And I think JD Vance helps. But I think Trump was already going to win them, but I think JD Vance helps a lot in that region of the country. What do you think?
What I loved was, as you said, his personal story is one of proving the American dream still exists. Also, I love the media's freak out over him. That's a pretty good radical. It's so MAGA and so over the top and all these things. And then his speech is like, hey, I had a good relationship with my Meemaw, and my mom has been clean and sober for 10 years. Here's my wife and my family. And I was like, wait, what? It was completely antithetical to what the media.
Yeah, right.
And I remember I was leaving the convention hall. A lot of Republicans were like, don't you think we need someone more fired up? And I said, first of all, the pick's made. Second of all, no. We have someone who's fired up, okay?
Yeah.
The president is fired up. JD Vance can be fine. And what I love really most is the fact he didn't like Trump at the outset, okay? So that he can go into suburbia and say, guys, I was one of you. I didn't think he was going to be good for the country. I was scared of him. But then I got to know him and work with him and see the record-setting success and all this kind of stuff. And look at what he gave us. I think it's a good play for those voters out there who are giving Trump a second look or a first look for the first time.
Right. And if you go back and look at what happened in the Democrat primaries back then, when Harris was still in it, when she straight up called Joe Biden a racist and a segregationist over the busing stuff, about he sided with the segregationist senators over that stuff. So that was like legit criticism from her on Biden, calling him a racist. And she's talking about an event from history, an event from the past. That affected her personally. Yeah. That is not something that if she works with him or gets to know him over time, she can go, you know what, I was wrong about that. It's not like a policy difference, or it's not like something a matter of his delivery or his style or something. She said that this scarred her as a young child. How can she just like get over that? Right. Vance has a different thing. His was, hey, look, I had those opinions when Trump first came on the scene, and I listened to the media telling stories about him, And I believed, heck, one of my clients, Harriet Hageman, tells a similar story. I believed what the media was saying about the guy before I had a chance to check it out myself.
Yeah.
And so I said a couple of things when I had that early opinion, but you know what? He proved me wrong. Now, Joe Biden could not go back in time and prove to Kamala Harris that he wasn't a segregation. You can't go back 40 years and undo that.
And even
it's
better,
not the same. It's not the same.
Even better, Kamala Harris talks about how she worked so closely with Beau Biden, Joe's son, and how great of a man he was, and how he told all these great stories about his dad. And after she worked with him, then she went on stage and called Joe Biden a racist. Like after that. So let me get this straight. You worked with a racist's son, and then you went and worked with the racist himself? Like what? Or maybe, just maybe, she's full of it, right? So
possibility. Have you considered the possibility that she might be full of it?
I think those are things we need to kind of watch out for moving forward. I think this race has changed, but I don't know that it's all that different. You know what I mean? It's changed a little bit.
You know what? Clay Travis put something on Twitter that I thought was pretty good. This is like, put it in football terms. This is like if a NFL team or a college team has a quarterback who is not very talented, just not good at all. And the team is an underdog going into that weekend's game, and they're let's say they're a 14-point underdog. And then that quarterback gets hurt and they get replaced by the second string quarterback who is not good enough to have replaced the starting quarterback before he got hurt, and who wasn't very good to begin with. So a lesser quality quarterback is now going to run the team. And everybody gets excited just because it's a different number on the jersey. Yeah. But does the line on the game change? No. Still underdog by 2 touchdowns, or maybe even more. Maybe the line moves further away.
Right.
So it's just a change in the quarterback, but it's still a bad team. And this quarterback is as bad as the first quarterback was, is less talented politically, if that's even conceivable. But I think it's true in this case.
Let's talk in the last few minutes here, if we can, about the Secret Service. Director Cheeto stepping down. And I'm going to start because I worked with the Secret Service very closely in the White House, and there are some really amazing people there. And the fact that those Secret Service folks in Pennsylvania jumped on top of Trump and were willing to take bullets for him shows you a lot of the bravery that exists inside that department. However, why they had to jump on him in the first place proves this was an abject failure at every level. Cheadle refused to resign, refused to tender a resignation, and much like Joe Biden said, no, I'm in this for the long haul. When Ronald Reagan was shot here in D.C., there was a Republican appointee that was the director. He stepped down and said, I didn't do my job. I have one job. That's to protect the president. I didn't do it. But to watch her go on Capitol Hill and see her face, how smug she was, no self-reflection, no self-awareness. She was not contrite. She was not apologetic. She was not remorseful. She basically said, hey, we'll get to it when we get to it. 60 days, 90 days, maybe I'll give you more. She answered more questions to ABC than she did to Congress. And when you don't have answers to significant, serious questions, it leaves people to make their own conclusions, piecing it together from videos from the scene, eyewitnesses, etc. And it's not a good picture they painted for the Secret Service. And I, for one, am glad she stepped down. It's too late, but they need to do an overhaul of how they protect these folks, because Kamala Harris is going to give a lot more speeches. So is Donald Trump. They deserve protection from the Secret Service, and I hope they figure out what happened, where the failures were, and I hope they fix it.
Yeah, and there's so much talk these days by, mostly the Democrats talking about misinformation, and we don't want disinformation or misinformation getting out of there. And they're always worried about conspiracy theories and people filling in the gaps with their own suppositions about what happened or not.
Yeah.
This woman was the director of the Secret Service, and she was asked, did he act alone? Was he a lone gunman? Simple question. Yes, he acted alone, or no, we have reason to believe he did not act alone. Not specifically that was there a second shooter, nothing that specific. Simply, did he act alone? And she said, I will have to refer you to the FBI. But hold on a second. Do you, the Secret Service, do you believe that he acted alone? I'm going to have to refer you to the Secret Service. If you don't want people coming up with their own conspiracy theories, you have to have a better answer for that question. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, but even still, you're the ones who failed, and now you're investigating your own failure. I'm not going to believe it when they do come out with it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Her biggest, well, she went in there and the smugness was a problem.
Yes.
But she's probably seen other people go into hearings and be smug and have nothing happen to them. Right.
Sure.
Like who's that joker from the FBI with the smug guy who was about the Russiagate stuff? The FBI, you know who I'm talking about?
Comer, Clapper, Brennan, all of
them. No. Run-of-the-mill agent. Anyway, never mind. But the mistake she made was she didn't have Democrats to protect her. She thought that she would have Democrats protecting her, and they turned on her too.
Yep.
And they didn't protect her. One last thing I want to get into is real quick, the VP stakes now, where we don't know who Kamala Harris is going to select for her running mate. I thought this clip from CNN was both funny and also raises an important point. Here's Jared Polis, who is the Democratic governor of Colorado, on CNN with Dana Bash.
If she asked you to be her running mate, would you accept?
Well, Dana, we're not even there, Dana. I appreciate the question. I love the job I'm doing. I love Colorado. It's great. Obviously, if somebody asks, I take a serious look at it, but my phone hasn't rung yet. Look, if they do the polling and it turns out that they need a 49-year-old balding gay Jew from Boulder, Colorado, they got my number.
That was very funny.
Okay. Good line. However, one of those things that he just mentioned is going to be a problem for the Democratic Party. I don't think, and so we have Jared Polis there making a joke, but you have J.B. Pritzker, right, was the governor of Illinois. Josh Shapiro is the governor of Pennsylvania. These are a couple of names that are on the supposed short list for Kamala Harris's VP choice. There is no way, given what we know about the makeup of the Democratic Party today, and based on the protests and the violence that we had seen on college campuses following the war in Gaza, and people taking Hamas's side over Israel's side, and actual Democrats in Congress siding with Hamas over Israel. And you have Harris herself, who has said that she is going to boycott Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to Congress later this week. Yep. There is no chance that the pro-Hamas wing of the Democratic Party will permit the National Party to put a Jewish candidate on its national ticket. No chance. There is anti-Semitism all throughout the what is the percentage of the Democratic Party that would be considered in the squad wing or the Hamas wing of the party? 35%? I don't know. Hard to put a number on it, but it's too many to have a Jewish person running for vice president. No chance, because there are anti-Semites everywhere in the Democratic
And the media
Party.
pointed that out. The media has pointed that out too, that they wouldn't pick Shapiro either in Pennsylvania. Look, for Kamala Harris to boycott that speech, I think is so short-sighted, in large part because if she were to win, she'd have to work with Benjamin Netanyahu. And their first interaction with her as the nominee is for her to boycott one of his speeches is absolutely ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
So
and
it's clear the anti-Semitism is in the Democrat Party. When you saw that stuff on college campuses, when you see the squad and their embrace of Hamas and other things, it's going to be a problem for Kamala Harris. It's going to be a problem for this party. Her ties to those folks, whether it be through familial association or whether it be through her refusal to stand strong with Israel or boycott these speeches, is going to be an issue. And I think we could continue to point that out moving forward. Fair game. And so when we get this whole thing settled, let the fight begin.
I hear you. All right. That's a lot of ground we covered. Good to see you again.
You too, man.
You made it back from the convention safely and all your other travels. Appreciate that. Sunny, not with us this week. She'll be back next week or the week after, perhaps. I know she's got a lot going on too. And I'm sure there will be a lot that goes on between now and the next time we talk. For Hogan Gidley, I'm Tim Murtaugh. This has been the Line Drive Podcast.